It's a How I Lead episode where we reach out to the various corners of the world and find the everyday leaders, the people who think, I'm just doing what everybody else is doing, right? And then we talk with them and we realize that they have some phenomenal ideas. Here they thought they were just an everyday person serving, and now they realize they're an extraordinary leader who's building Zion. And this is what we did. We reached out to Michelle Colledge in Cedar Hills, Utah. In Utah County, I know. It's a long Wasatch Front there, but there's still so many nuggets here for every individual across the world, every primary presidency across the world to learn from. She served in a ward primary presidency and then was called as the stake primary president. So we sort of talk about both of those dynamics. She talks about, have you ever heard of a stake primary devotional? Well, it's a thing. And the thing that she does at the beginning of, or that she's seen, the thing that she recommends at the beginning of primary presentations, and also known as primary programs, is to keep the reverence of the sacrament and to transition into the primary presentation. That alone, that's their teaser. That alone is worth listening to this episode. We talk about being a perceptive leader, looking for those who need to be connected with, building personal relationships with the kids. I mean, this is a one to listen to. And if you know a primary president, drop this link into an email, a text message, and send it on to a primary presidency member that you know, and they will thank you for it because it's such good information. So let's get into it. Here's my interview with Michelle Colledge, the primary president. Well, tell us just the story then of, what do you remember of being called? Did you come right from a ward primary presidency into a stake primary presidency, or what do you remember from just being called?
Yeah. So I started out, so in my ward, I was currently serving as a primary teacher and at the time it was called activities. So primary activity leader.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing those at the same time. And then my bishop called me in to be a ward primary president. And that was super exciting. This was in 2019. And so right before, before COVID, all that fun. And so a lot of the things that I'll be talking about today are things that I actually experienced during COVID, but still apply today as a way of connecting. So COVID did serve a purpose there. I did learn a lot from COVID that I can apply in so many ways in life. But so anyway, served there for about 3.5 years, and then got a call from the stake presidency, and was released as a ward primary president and jumped right in as a stake primary president. And I served there for just 3 years. Yeah, pretty much just 3 years. So in October, I was just released. I was telling you about 2 weeks ago. So this is very tender time. We're still processing.
Yeah, well, I hope this sort of serves as a way to kind of reflect and process
Yes.
all that happened there. But so what do you remember just transitioning from the ward to the stake level, as far as like finding your footing, or, because it's, some people feel like, now I guess I'm like a super primary president, when in reality
Yeah.
it's completely different, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because depending on who you talk to, coming out of ward primary presidency and then going into stake, I remember people saying, "Oh, this is going to be a lot easier. You only have to do a couple visits here and there. You're not going to have to do as much." And that's kind of not my thing. I like to be involved, and I like to visit, and I like to train and to help in any way I can. But I think for me, I kept thinking, where is the handbook on being a stake primary president? And there's not a whole lot. If you go through that, there's not a ton of information. Like, you need to visit this many times in these wards, and this is how often and how long. So there's not a lot of direction there. But eventually, I think after I was in for a couple of months, I want to say about 2 to 3 months, I got an email from the general primary board asking or involving us in it was for our whole presidency to attend a training, so an online training. So that's kind of where I learned some things, and I thought, oh, here we go. Now we're going to learn all the stuff that is going to be involved for a stake primary presidency. And even then, it was really a lot of training. The training was involving more about what the wards are doing, what they should be doing. So I think that kind of answered the question. I'm supposed to teach them what they should be doing. I think that's what we're supposed to do, is to just, it's not about you and how often you're supposed to do this. You need to just see what needs are out there and then attack it and just see how you can help and lift and share. So that's how we did it. And we were super busy and loved it.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice to get like the clear
Yeah.
plan and this is exactly what you need to do and how many times and when but also
Yeah.
there's a blessing in that autonomy of just saying, you know what, you know your area, figure it out. And that's scary because you have to lean
Yeah.
in, but it's probably
That's
better in the
exactly
long
it.
run. Yeah. Yeah, very cool. So what was your like how would you describe just your general cadence as a primary presidency as far as visiting or holding presidency meetings or just that general approach?
In ward or steak, which one?
In the stake, yeah.
Steak. So for the steak, we still did a presidency meeting every single month. So every month we would meet, um, and mainly because we had activities planned. They're not required activities, but we had things where once a year we would do an activity, and that activity alone. And just so everybody knows, kind of a little back. I guess I need to back up a little bit. I'm in Utah, so
Yeah.
this is a little different. It's a
Yeah,
little bit of a
Utah
different.
County too, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, Utah
even more.
County. So, so in my ward primary, we had around 90 kids when I served there. In my stake, we have over 600 kids. So it's quite the event if you do an activity here. Now, of course, for the stake primary, that those are different. The activities are different. They're for kids that are activity age and valiant activities now. So
Mhm.
so we didn't have to plan for 600, but still we had a good 200 to 300. So we would have those stake primary meetings every month and just kind of go over the needs. We have 11 wards in my stake. So that's another
Wow,
thing. It's
yeah.
a larger stake. So 4 buildings, and we would travel around and we would attend often. So I would say we were in maybe 3 or 4 times per ward per year. And that includes like going to singing time and going to class time. We like to go to class time too. But we would attend those so pretty often, as often as we could, because we still had singing the primary presentations to go to as well. So we had those. So it's a little bit different. We have a big stake. So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And then, is there anything else you mentioned, was it a yearly primary activity you did?
yeah, so a
Okay.
yearly primary activity, that one we would usually hold in the summer. We did every year that I was in, we would hold one. And that was new to our stake. Our stake wasn't doing those before our presidency came in. So that was not something we could go to them and say, hey, how did you do this in the past? It was something that it's not required. So it was just something that we felt that would be fun to bring all of the different wards together and as a way to show them how we could do an activity like this. The kids really fed off of being together with their friends that they knew from school. It was an opportunity to invite people that were not members of the church to these activities that were in our communities. So it was really fun in a big way, instead of in a ward setting where it's a little bit more intimate and maybe thought of as a little scarier for parents to send their kids off to a thing. But anyway, we had great turnouts. It was really fun to do those activities, but it took a lot of planning. So we met every month just to plan those and also to just navigate the help that we needed in each ward too. Sometimes we would
Mhm.
have to there were wards that would ask us, primary presidencies from wards that would ask us to come and just serve, just if they needed to go to meetings or if they were going to be on vacations or whatever, we were filling in for them. So
And
we
with
love
that
that.
yearly activity, did you have like a committee outside of your presidency to
No,
organize that? Just the
no.
presidency, cool.
Yep.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
And then did you do any other type of, you know, primary presidency training during the year? Any other, meetings or things that you would organize?
No, no, those are that one that you get from the general primary board. You get that every time if you get a new presidency. That's
Oh,
when you
okay.
get that training. Now, I did get new counselors after 2 years. So when they were released, I got 2 more counselors, and then they sent me that email again. So I was able to do that training in one more time, which I'm really grateful for because it did have some new information in there, and so that was good. But no, there's really no training other than that first initial training that we got. So,
Cool. That's great.
yep.
Um, Anything with now, what are we calling? It's not the primary program. Is there a
The
more
presentation.
the primary presentation in the fall,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It sounds like you made an effort to attend as many of those as you could, or
Yeah, yeah, we went to all of them. And like I said, I'm in Utah, so it's not hard to get
yeah,
to
right.
those. But there were times that we don't feel like it's our job to schedule those. That's up to the ward on when they
Yeah.
want to have theirs. They are usually supposed to be in the last part of the year. But we would go to those, and sometimes there would be 4 a day, you know. So obviously we can only make 3 of those. So we would split up and make it to make sure everybody was represented and make them. We'd write a little thank you card and what we loved about their program so they could read it to the kids afterwards,
Mhm.
to make it just a little touch from the stake.
Yeah, that's great. Anything you picked up, like if you were to talk to a brand new ward primary president and, doing their primary presentation, we're preparing for it. Any like, you know, best practices you picked up or suggestions you would give?
So I loved one of the primaries that we visited. They would sing a song as the kids were coming up. So they didn't have all the kids already up there at the beginning. They would have the whole congregation sing "I'm a Child of God" without music, just sing the song. And as they're doing that, it was such a beautiful reverence to it because just the spirit was just so strong. We could see all these little children coming up to do their part. And there was just something special about that where um, at some of the other wards we'd go to, it was like mass chaos, you know, everybody's kids are running and there was a lot of talking and chatter, but this really kind of focused those adults, all of us and teenagers, helped us to focus on why we were there, since it is an ordinance room, and really kept that spirit going so that we weren't lost in that chaos that was going on in some of the others. So I loved that.
So,
Um,
so just so I understand that, so maybe the older kids would be invited up first, and then they would sing a song while the other kids come up.
No, the whole congregation
Oh, the
was
whole
singing
congregation.
the
Oh, cool.
song so that that was what was going on instead of the mass chaos and talking. Like
Yeah.
usually it depends on the ward. Some wards already have the kids already sitting up there before sacrament and they're in place and ready.
Hmm.
Most of the wards in our state don't do that. They have them just come up as soon as, sacrament's finished. All the kids will make their way up there and it gets pretty loud and kind of, I mean, we just came out of the sacrament and it was a little bit, it's beautiful and
Yeah.
spiritual, but then it becomes quite the wah.
Interesting.
So it was nice to have the whole congregation just start singing "I am a child of God" a cappella,
Mm.
and the change that happens when you do that and how it sets the tone and gets those kids ready and reverent as well.
Oh,
So
interesting. So you don't have anybody playing it at the organ or the
no,
piano. There's probably not even a conductor, or someone
nope.
conducting. You're just saying, let's all sing the the epic primary song, right? And
Yeah,
then
the primary
that's cool.
president got up and said, "We would like to invite the children up while they're coming. If everybody, we're going to start singing 'I'm a Child of God,' and
Oh, cool.
she'd get it started and then walk off. Then everybody's just, we know the song, we know what we're doing, so
Yeah.
we would sing along, and the kids, it helped them be reverent. It was beautiful, so that was great,
Oh man, that's worth the price of admission, Michelle. That's
right?
good. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. Awesome. Any other like primary presentation tips and tricks that you would have, or
We seem to really love when the kids are writing their parts. Maybe give them a prompt, but let them fill it in with something that really applies, something that they really learned or thought about. Sometimes it sounds silly, and sometimes, but it's them,
yeah,
and it's really beautiful. It shows you the heart of that child, and it a little bit into their family too. Sometimes they have the opportunity, depending on how many kids are in your primary. You can really have um, you can have, if you have a small primary, let them go for it. Let those kids give a little talk, maybe shorten up the songs a little bit and let them, I mean, it's totally up to you and and how your presidency wants to do it. But it's always nice to let these children have the opportunity to speak to the whole ward and to share a little bit about what's in their heart and their testimonies. Um, anyway, so
yeah.
yeah, let them write it. I know some people like to go online and go to Etsy and be like, what is the program? Like, give me a pre-printed program of all the prompts and everything, all the words for the kids. But really, I think it's an opportunity missed. I think you can go and have the opportunity. Again, what we're going to talk about today is that connection. Also, you miss a little bit of a connection where you can say, hey, what is your part? What do you want to tell us about? What do you want to speak about? And have that moment with the child to be able to write that and to get it down. And that's just another touch point for every primary presidency, to have an involvement in what is going on in that child's life, and to hear it from them. So
Yeah, no, I love that. And, of course, if a primary presentation isn't a little silly from time to time, I mean, that's why I'm coming, right? I don't want
I
it too
know,
buttoned up.
I know,
Uh,
they're so cute.
and in my ward, this just a few weeks ago, and we had ours, my 10-year-old son, they gave him like like a topic, as if he was giving a talk, right? And
Yeah,
said, we want a 2 to 3 minute talk on this thing. And for him, this was like, wow, like this is the big time, right? Like I'm speaking in sacrament, and it created a great discussion that we had, my wife and I had with him, and preparing, and we talked about different things he could say. And to see him stand up there, he
yeah,
wasn't reading anything, he just spoke for those couple minutes, and man, he felt like so, he just loved it. It was a really positive experience for everybody involved. So
I
yeah,
love it. I love it.
cool. Well, let's, you sent me a few principles and things to consider, just with your time in the primary, and one of those is being engaged in primary service. Where
Yeah.
do we go from there?
All right. So sometimes, and this was me. So when I say sometimes, when I was first called into the primary presidency on the ward level, I read over everything, and I felt like, oh, this is a lot of administration. And remember, I had come in right in after they had kind of shortened everything down. It's 2 hours, not 3 hours anymore. So things were a little bit different. But I felt like, oh, so we don't have sharing time anymore, where the primary presidency used to have more involvement in teaching the kids. And that was a fun part for a lot of people miss that. But this was an opportunity now to be creative and think of, well, now instead of just thinking about how I need to keep primary staffed and how I need to make sure kids are coming and make sure we have primary activity leaders at the time, all of these things, how can I really connect to the kids? How can I really connect with the teachers? And how can I help them to all connect together too? How can we do that? How can we make that happen? And not feel like I'm just there to take the role, or just to make sure we're all just staffed and present. So that's kind of where I started at first. And then with our presidency, we met together, and that's one of the first things we got out of the gate. We're like, how do we get to know these kids? And the first thing, obviously, we wanted to learn their names. We needed to know who they are, so that when we're talking to them, we see them out in the wild, you know their names.
Yeah.
And when you're calling on them, or sitting with them, you want to know who they are, just like the Savior knows our names. Likewise, we should know the names of those we serve. And we had 90 kids, and it was hard. So that was an adventure. I would say that primary is not administrative. It's not just that. It is also, for a primary presidency, it's a ministering opportunity, if you really look for those ways to minister. And so some of the ways that we were able to do that, we when they shortened church down, the church asked not to do remember how I used to do the primary welcome songs? We
Oh
welcome
yeah.
you today. So, and the little birthday songs, which everybody, we all know, we were all kids once. We
Yeah.
love to come just for that special day. This is the day that I'm being recognized in primary for my birthday. Everybody knows now, and that was a hard transition. The primary presidency before me was already in place, and they had shortened that down to where they were doing it once a month, because they were in fear of the children revolting, of not having that anymore.
Yeah.
So when we got put in and read over the handbook, we decided we're just going to rip off the Band-Aid and eliminate it. We were asked not to do it. We're just not going to do it. And I know that can be a source of I know a lot of these primary presidencies are probably like, oh, we still do that or whatever. And that's fine. For our ward, we just decided we're gonna go with the handbook on that. We had 90 kids. So for us, it was kind of nice to just focus on The reason that they had taken that out is so that you can focus more. Primary was shorter. Singing time was shorter. And it was time that time was to be used to learn about the gospel through song. So we felt like that was great. So, okay, so now we can't celebrate the kids for their birthdays in that specific way. So how can we? How can we serve them still? How can we still recognize them and make them feel loved? And so we kind of pivoted and just thought, well, why don't we just, I mean, we're in Utah, we can go knock on their door and we can go and sing a song to them and take them their silly straw. We did Sip, Sip, Hooray. And they were loving it. They loved the little visits. They loved that we were coming to sing to them. Our whole presidency would go and we would just go to their doorstep and we wanted to hear what they got for their birthday or what they're looking forward to for their birthday. And we just really connected in a way that we weren't connecting when we were having them come up to the front of the room to sing have all the kids sing a happy birthday. So it got to a point where we would let parents know we're coming the first week of the month. We're going to visit all the birthday kids because we had a lot of kids. So we're going to do everybody on this first week. And they were waiting at the windows. They had you could see the little curtains and the blinds. They knew we were coming and they were waiting because our church started a little bit later. So they knew we were coming and we felt like, you know what, I think we did the right thing here for us. We felt like that connection was pretty sweet. So we liked that. If you're not a Utah presidency, you could always do a little card, a personal card about what you love about that child, something so personal and so tender and sweet to them. Children love affirmation, words of affirmation about how great they are because they are so great. And who doesn't want to hear that on their birthday about a reason why you love them so much? So anyway, there's lots of different ways that you could do that. So that's just one way that we are like, you know what, we can still personally serve and not feel like it's just an administrative calling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that personal connection, that goes a long way, right?
yeah.
You didn't take the time in primary, but you saved that time to use elsewhere, but I'm sure those kids just will have that memory forever.
Yep. And we got so much more for it too than what we bargained for in the first place. We're like, oh, I could see the wisdom in that. That's pretty sweet. We felt a connection to those kids.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Any other ways you connected with the kids that would be worth mentioning?
So we did. And this is something statewide and our ward is, so you could do it both, but we would make sure to visit their classes often and just work that out with the teachers in advance so that they kind of have a heads up that you're coming in. So on a ward level, we would say we would love to come and visit. One of our primary presidency would just come and just come and visit, just be in the class, see how things are going. It gives you a great insight to how that class is behaving for that teacher, how that teacher is connecting with those kids. You're not there to correct them you're just there to observe and to participate and smile along and support those teachers and help with whatever. Some teachers really loved having us there for just that alone, just being the support, an extra hand too, especially in those those younger classes. And to feel that support from us. So on a ward level, we would do that. We would also go to their activities too. We didn't go to everything. So don't think every week we're hopping in there and like, hey, we're back. But on occasion, it was so fun to just play with these kids, go and just be a part of whatever activity they're doing. Learning pickleball or whatever it is that they're doing. And they just loved having their primary presidency there and to see that they care, just the little fist pumps. Oh, good shot. You're good at this. They just loved that. And it was a way for us to learn more about them and to be able to talk to them. So there's ways to get in the game. There's ways, if you want to be a part of their lives, there's plenty of ways to be a part of their lives.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. What about on the stake side? Was there a way that you connected personally with the primary presidencies across the stake?
Yeah. So for the primary presidencies, and this kind of goes back to a question you asked earlier too. There's not a lot of training that we get as stake primary presidencies, but we kind of feel like in the stake we only do a meeting with our ward primary presidencies once a year. So at that stake leadership training meeting that we do, where they divide up by auxiliaries. And so we only get that once a year. But in the middle, it was the beginning of the year, this year, we got new information from the church about a service opportunity, the new service projects that primaries should be involved in. And so we kind of felt like, well, we can't really wait till November now. So yeah, there were times where we felt like we need to call an audible, we got to do something different here. So one time this year, when that came out, we thought, well, one way that we could do this training, we did a breakfast. So super cheap. We just said, hey, every primary presidency member, secretaries, everybody come, let's talk about service. Let's unwrap this a little bit and talk about this new thing that the church has put out. And also a way to just kind of touch base with them and just show them some love and serve them in a way that we don't typically do. And because most of the time we're going to their ward, we're going to ward conferences and serving there. But this was so fun to do it outside of that and just say, don't dress up, just come. It's in the morning, come eat breakfast with us. And personally serve that way outside of primary. So, and that was a way of us showing our love for them and wanting them to have that training and not just send out a mass email saying, hey, here's the new training. Here's the new stuff for you guys. Take it on.
Yeah.
So,
good luck, right?
Good luck.
Yeah. What about the next? Tell me about your principle as far as to perceive like the Savior is, and you've probably touched on this a little bit, but anything else to add there?
Yeah. So, and when you about the Book of Mormon, in the Book of Mormon, when the Savior was perceiving when he was about to leave, and he saw that they wanted him to stay longer. Just that kindness, just looking around, and in primary, how we can do that. Look around, see what you're up against, see what these kids need, the love that they need. I remember one time we had a little boy that in singing time, when I was a ward primary president, we use and a lot of you probably do this too, the jar of popsicle sticks. And they all have their little names on them. And she would pull about, but we had so many kids, even though we did junior and senior, you're still looking at 40 and 50 kids that you're pulling sticks out. And everybody wants to do something. Everybody wants to serve. Everybody wants a part. And this little boy, after singing time, was up there. He looked sad. He's going through all the sticks, right? And of course, I know what he's looking for. I know he's looking for his little name. And so I'm like, hey, what's up, Forrester? What are you looking for? He goes, I just don't think I have a stick. I don't think my name's in here. I think it's missing. And I'm like, oh, let's sit down. So we just dumped that jar out, two of us on the ground, and we're just sifting through till we found his name. And it was a good opportunity to be able to be like, you know what? It's a reminder that you have a large primary. We have a large primary. They all want to feel needed, loved, and you've just got to notice that. And another example of this is, and sorry, I talk about COVID all the time. I served through COVID, so
yeah, it's a memorable thing.
When primary shut down, that was something. I mean, we had Zoom for all the adults. We had Zoom, they were in their church meetings for all the adults. And then our teenagers would go and they would do all their Zoom. And I remember sitting there watching the Zoom screen during Sunday school. And the thing that just stood out to me, because of my calling and because of that stewardship I had, and I just sat there and all I could see were these little tiny faces, looking around, mom and dad, just wandering in the back, not really having they're not in church. There's not primary for them. And that was super hard, but it was something that really, really touched me. And I couldn't even, I just remember telling my husband, surely there's a way for these kids to feel connected. They're all at home. We're all just needing that connection, and these children need it too. I remember we came up with a plan to do Kahoot. So if you're familiar with Kahoot, we told all the kids after church is over, after the adults finish theirs and the teenagers are done with their meetings, join us for Kahoot. We're doing Come Follow Me Kahoot. So this whole week, you better be studying so that you know the answers to. And we've never seen kids studying so hard and preparing so much so that they can play Kahoot with their brothers and sisters and competing against their friends. And it was so funny. So we'd come up with some little questions for them. And these kids were on it with Kahoot. They knew the Come Follow Me lesson for that week. And it was a way that we did it as a primary. So we would just say, after meetings, everybody join, here's the link. And the parents would give it to their kids and they would just log in. And that was just a way for us to connect during a hard time. And what we told them, bring your knock knock jokes. We'll do that afterwards. So we had a lot of I've got a million knock knock jokes, but we had some real fun with them. So
that's great. And I just love that it's more like a cadence, right? That of just being, you want to get through the agenda and you know what's next. And so, whose name is the next on the agenda, and we'll just go there. But always sort of be in that place of perceiving like the child
how
that
can
want
you,
to find his name, right? Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, how can you help? How can you serve? And what are the needs? And being the people, being that kind of a leader that can, like you said, you know what your agenda is, what you're trying to get through. And I learned that on the stake level. I remember being my first week on the job as the stake primary president, going in there and having to meet with the presidency and prepare them for ward conference. And this primary presidency is setting up everything. They're trying to set up all their chairs. They're trying to get all their little things out for their, because it was the new year. And so all their little chairs were being marked with names and what class level and all this stuff. And here I am, like studying okay, what am I going to teach them? What am I going to do? And I look over and my counselors are over there doing, they're helping them set up their chairs and they're really in it. Like they're really serving. I'm over here worried about myself and they're over there just doing what the Savior would do. Here. I was fine. I didn't need to study the stuff, but I was nervous.
Yeah.
I wasn't perceiving what the real deal was, though. So that's what I'm saying. Just look around and see what you're up to and what they really need.
That's great. Last principle you have, and again, maybe you've touched on this enough, but inviting children to serve. Anything else to mention in that context?
So kids are just natural. They just naturally want to serve and help. When I did our training from the stake general primary presidency on the second time, so the second time I attended that one, they gave us, they had kind of quickly mentioned that you can do a stake primary devotional. And I thought, well, what in the heck is that? A stake primary devotional. That's, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, so that's a primary program on a stake level. Like that's kind of, and then the more I sat and thought about that, I remember meeting with these are new counselors now. They came in new, and I had already been in for a while. So I was like ready for something else. And I don't know if I'd have been as excited the first time around, but the second time around, I thought, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. So what we did is we decided that we would take clipboards around to every single ward. And we would put on these clipboards, how would you like to serve? And lots of options. So they could be a greeter. They could be, because remember, I've got 600 kids. So we've got to figure out how everybody can feel involved. How can everybody serve? And so we let them, so every primary had this. How can they serve? A greeter. We did cupcakes. So this was a way for me to get out of having to buy cupcakes, I admit. But we call them the cupcake crew, and we made them little badges and everything. So they wore those the day of the devotional, that they were little cupcakes on it, and they were a little cupcake crew. And our greeters wore the big greeter badges, like with the picture of Jesus on it and everything. They were ready to go. We asked if they wanted to give a talk or if they wanted to lead the music. They were doing everything that could be done. They were going to do it all. So no adults. That's what they were. So we asked them, what part do you want to play in this? Musical numbers. Just give it to us. And then we sent it also to the parents, an online form they could fill out, because we really wanted this to be on a family level, but because we wanted all the families to come. And when serving in primary, that's so key. If you can get a family, that is the best. If you can get a family to serve together and to support that child and to come, I'll get to the end of the story, but we put this all out there. We had so many signups, wonderful things. Kids signed up to play the bells. We had it at the stake center. When we started this event, it was filled. We used every chair all the way back to the back of the building. It looked like we were in stake conference. We had so many kids and parents. Families, like I said, families were coming. This was at 4:00 on a Sunday. So they had already been through church for 2 hours, and some of them had even had their primary presentation that day. And this was an extra thing that they did. We had speakers, all the kids spoke. We had our fun little, our baptism kids. This was such a special thing. We invited all the kids that had been baptized that year to come and sing a baptism song. And we had them wear their little white dresses. If they had their white dress still, we had them wear them. And it was like little angels up there on the stand. And it was so touching and so beautiful. So we had all of that going on. And then afterwards, we shared cupcakes. Oh, another way that they could serve, since we're speaking about service, we asked them, anybody that wants to can draw a picture of, I love primary because, and they could just fill it in. What is it that you love about primary? And though I'm not kidding you, if you could see, we had over 100 submissions of artwork that we bound and gave to the stake presidency. And we set that, it's sitting in our stake presidency office, where everybody comes and they go to get their temple recommend interviews.
Yeah.
That's where it sits, and people can just flip through that and look at all the artwork of the reason why. And it's a picture of a chorister. They love their teacher, they love the temple, the prophet. It was so many. Jesus, of course, many pictures of Jesus. Funny, touching, tender, all sorts of things. And these children just really, we had no idea that the response would be so big, but they served in such a big way. And now this was like my last thing that we did before I got released. This new primary president coming in is like, whoa, what did you do? Because now we have people are asking when we're doing that again, and it's quite the event. So, but it was very sweet, and it was such a great finale to the service that we gave. So
Wow.
it
So
was great to see.
this is called a stake primary devotional. Is that right?
It is.
And it's right in the
Yep.
handbook.
Nope, it's
Okay.
not. It's not in the handbook, so you will never find it there.
Okay, good.
But
So this is something you came up with.
no, it's something that they had mentioned in our stake train or our general primary board. When you get trained, they mention a way that you can do this, a way that you can help children serve is this primary devotional. Now, they meant it was probably on a smaller scale. And I believe now that I found the post, they put it on their primary worldwide Facebook page that they put about this information. They had mentioned that you could do it for 8, the activity kids 8 and up, that's something that they could participate in. We missed that somehow, and we did it for the entire stake, which I wouldn't change a thing, Kurt.
That's awesome.
I wouldn't change a thing.
Well, this has been awesome, and I invite, if there are people who want to ask a question, start thinking about that. Either type it in the comments or the Q&A box, or you can raise your hand. And I want to share just the dynamic way that you can find more primary resources here, because there is, so in Leading Saints, in Zion Lab, there's a lot of free stuff, and like this live stream, and you can log in and listen and ask questions and things like that. But to really use the resource to the peak level of efficiency is to become a Zion builder, basically become a monthly donor to be able to access all the archive and the different features on Zion Lab. And if you can't afford it, or we have donors who stepped up, and you can just say, I'd like a sponsorship, and it's yours, and we won't even ask questions, and you can take it. So one thing I love about this is, I'll show you here, is the AI clerk, so I came in here and just asked, how can I best lead children at church? And it goes through all of our archive and gives these ideas of calling each child by name. You've mentioned some of this, Michelle, right? Bear simple personal testimonies, yada, yada. And then it shows you the sources. So in the future, Michelle's live stream will appear here with some of her ideas that it'll factor in there. And so it's such a simple way to get great ideas related to a specific calling. So there is a little cheat code there for Zion Lab, is to use the AI clerk. So Britta.
So Michelle, you did a great job. I'm in a ward primary presidency right now, and we can have anywhere from 3 to 20 kids, and that's the entire primary. And we never know which it's going to be. But I just, you're sharing the steak idea that you had 600 kids and they all had ways to feel like they were a part of it. Just tells me we need to be having children do a lot more, and realizing, Jesus said that blessed are the children, for such is the kingdom of heaven. They really do have incredible things to share, and we need to remember that in lots of ways there are teachers, and I think you clearly have found ways to make that possible, even with like huge numbers. So thank you. It was excellent.
Thank you.
That's cool.
And Britta, I did have a ward. There is a ward in our state that has, on a good day, 10 kids. So believe it or not, in Utah, there is a ward that has 10 kids. And it's I wanted to go there all the time. Every time we visited them, I looked forward to it. It's such a small group, and it was so sweet because they all had a part, and they all felt just so part of everything going on. Yeah. So I have a special love for those small primaries, and definitely there's ways to serve and to love those little ones. How wonderful to be able to get to know 10 children at such a close, when there's not a whole lot of competition. You just can really focus in and just really shepherd those cuties. So I'm jealous. I love that too.
Cool. Yeah, actually, we had 1 week, we had 2, and it was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So there was way more adults than children, and it was actually, I don't even remember what we ended up talking about, but the spirit was incredible. It was just this really unique moment, and even all the adults were sort of taken back because somehow the spirit came in and just made it the most amazing day in primary. So yeah,
that's fun.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Michelle, Aaron asks, how long was the devotional?
So we kept it to an hour, believe it or not. But we even had some kids playing the piano. So luckily we have so many kids, but there were kids how I talked about the baptism kids. We had one that was playing the piano as well for them to sing to. But yeah, an hour. We had it all written out so that we could kind of see and time it to where we told them, pick songs that. Actually, that's another thing. They got to pick the songs. We did not give any direction on that. So yeah, an hour, and we kind of knew. I think it went like an hour and 5 minutes, and that's plenty of time because they're children. But they were captivated. I'm not kidding you. If you can, it's kind of like, how primary presentation is. Everybody loves the primary presentation. But this was so unique in the fact that I don't want to sound like I'm patting my back. I'm sorry if that comes across that way. But I mean, we had bells, people were playing the bells. And it was a group of girls, and I believe there were 4 or 5 girls that played these bells. And I remember getting a phone call because all they wanted to do, they picked a song, and it was "Lord, I Would Follow Thee." And they picked the song. They told me, and I was surprised. I'm like, no primary song? But I didn't say that. I was just like, well, that's impressive. Okay, they're gonna go with a hymn. And about a week before this devotional, we get this text from the primary leader saying, we need to make a change. There's a problem with the song. And I thought, oh, what's going on? And she goes, well, one of the girls has said that she doesn't feel that it's right not to sing the words. And I thought, there's no problem there. If some child is feeling that the words need to be there. And so this sweet girl sang the song for the bells. And it was the most, children, adults, they were wiping their eyes to hear this sweet little girl sing, Savior, may I learn to love thee, walk the path that thou hast. I mean, it was so touching, and it was captivating. So we had no problem with an hour. It was easily fine for everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. I love that. Love that. Well, I encourage people, obviously Michelle is in Zion Lab. You can send her a direct message in the system there. You can comment on this, on the recording, which is the same link that you clicked on to come watch this, and ask further questions there. But Michelle, last question I have for you is, as you reflect on your time in such a pivotal or an appropriate moment to reflect on your time as serving as a primary president or a leader, how has being a leader helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
Oh, well, I feel like the more I served, and this is just a little, maybe going back a little bit. When I first was called to be a primary president, it was actually the hardest time of my life.
Mm.
I was preparing to send my firstborn out into a mission to Colombia, of all places. And my next two boys, I have twin boys that were 17 at the time, um, had pulled us aside and told us that they no longer want to be a part of the church.
Mm.
And these were boys that we thought were getting ready to leave on a mission as well really soon. And this was just a time in my life where I felt like I just wanted to curl up in a ball somewhere and just waste away. That was not my plan in life. I really wanted something different. And I was a primary president. I couldn't just do that. I had a calling and I had a stewardship, and I have a love for the Lord, and I had to trust a plan that I didn't understand. And I had to just dig in and find the strength. And I felt so tethered as I was somebody serving. I felt so tethered to the Lord at that time. And I felt so, I felt Him. I felt the guidance, and I felt the strength that I needed to be able to serve during a really hard time. So I was a better leader by serving. I think when you serve, and when you really serve with love, and when you get to know the kids in a way that the Savior wants you to know them, and not just them, but also the leaders and our bishopric. We had a wonderful bishopric that cared and loved us. And did we agree on everything? No. I think that goes without saying. But we served, and we all served together. And I had wonderful counselors, and I had wonderful people that made that process so enjoyable. And it's a time in my life I'll never forget, and that I am so sad to have to put it aside. And now I'm just jumping back into my ward, like, where can I help? And taking those things that I learned from this calling, these callings, and realizing that, if you're looking at a vine of berries, say blackberries, you're looking at this vine, and on this vine, there's really ripe ones, and then there's some that are not very ripe. And that's us. Like, that is us. There's all stages on that vine. And in primary, your counselors may not be as ripe as you, or they may be riper than you, or your teachers, or whatever, and our children. And it was a way. It's a way to look at life, realizing we are all in this together. We're all at different conversion levels, service levels, comfortability, and we can serve Heavenly Father. We can love everybody. We can bring everybody together for this cause of the children, and bring them back to our Heavenly Father.